We're going to do some quick introductions, and then we have some prepared information. This is very informal, so please feel free to ask a lot of questions, and this is for all of you. So we want to make sure you're getting the information that you want out of it. I'm Rachel Basie, and I'm the executive director here, and I've been in this role for almost 13 years. It'll be 13 years March 1st.
My name is Griffin Callahan. I'm the ceramic studio and program manager here, and I'm also an artist who has shown at SAM in the last 3 years, so that's my experience.
My name's Kim Harrell. I am a silversmith, goldsmith, and jewelry designer. I've been teaching at the Art Students League for 11 years, and this will be I've done SAM every summer since 2016.
All right. My name is Jenna Almond-Williams, and I have been teaching at the Art Students League for 17 years, and I think I've been around 7 times in the market, not consistently in a row.
I'm Joe Higgins. I've been teaching monotypes here for, I think 14 years, and I've been doing SAM more than I can remember, but most of the SAMs I've done.
I'm Deb Rosenbaum. I have never done SAM, but I'm a faculty member here. I teach drawing and printmaking and collage, and I'm going to be sort of moderating and asking our panel some questions. We tried to get an artist in some diverse media so that you guys could address whatever questions you might have there. And I would like to go down the panel and just ask what you love about SAM.
Do you want me to give kind of the general overview?
Well, that's just
okay.
I mean, that was supposed to be part of their intro, but they didn't do it. So go ahead. What do you love about SAM?
I like just the connection. It's actually something that's, even when you don't sell, is going to get your name out there eventually. The fact is, the people coming there, it's gotten enough of a reputation to where they're coming there to buy art, so it's unique in that sense. And between those two things, it's well worth doing, even when the sales aren't high.
I agree with you, Joe. And then I also just like this community. I think this is a wonderful neighborhood to have a market in. And we remain a fine art market, so it's really geared toward people who are coming out really wanting to buy original artwork, and that's really great and not always the case for all markets.
Yeah, I like the connection with the artists. I like that they're all Colorado artists, almost without exception. And it's great being in the neighborhood because you get the shade of the trees, and the people, the vibe is very easy-going, and it's not like Cherry Creek is really, really super commercial, and there's throngs of people. I mean, we get a nice crowd here, but it just feels nicer, and it's easy to do, and it's fun you get a chance to go around and look yourself and see your colleagues, even though we have over 100 faculty, I think, here, and you don't see them very often, so it's a great way to kind of connect with people.
Yeah, I would second everything that has been said prior. I think my favorite aspect of the show is seeing the work that everyone makes that you might not get to otherwise get to encounter, because we are generally always either just maybe passing in the hallways of the building. You might know that somebody does painting or drawing, and you don't necessarily get to see quite what they're working on. So not only does it, get to bring our community closer together, but you really get to see how rich this community is in terms of our talent and, variety of media. I think it's, in my opinion, like one of the best community-based shows that I, have attended in the past, and now feel fortunate that I've been able to participate in.
And I should have shared that I have been in SAM as well. I was in SAM before I was in this position, and then I was in SAM the first 2 years and realized it was too much to try to be an artist in SAM and also run the show in charge of the event. So, but I just think it's a wonderful event to be a buyer at, to be an attendee at, to be an artist at. It really is a great community, a community event in this neighborhood, all those things. So with that, I'm going to dive into kind of the overview and the mission of SAM And some of the changes that, so how many, have all of you never been in SAM before? Is everybody new to this? Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Have all of you attended SAM? Okay. So the mission of SAM is really to promote the Art Students League and all of the artists who make up this amazing community. So the jurying into the show is based on a person's connectivity to the Art Students League community. So what that means is we are looking at how many classes you take. Are you a volunteer? Are you a current or past board member? Are you a faculty member? And in addition, you must have a current membership, and only media that can be made or studied in the classes at the Art Students League are what we're trying to highlight. So those are kind of the factors. We recognize that there are a lot of artists who this may be the first time that they're showing their work and selling their work, and that to me is one of the things that's really exciting about this show, is you can have someone who is showing their work to the general public for the first time next to someone who's been a professional artist for over 20 years. And I think that is part of what really makes this a unique experience, again, both for the artists and for the attendees. As Jenna mentioned, all of the work must be original handmade art. So there's, when you go to the application, it very clearly lists the type of work that cannot be displayed at SAM. So you can't have giclées, you can't have any copies. If you are a printmaker, you can do editions, but you need to clearly indicate that it's an edition. Same with certain types of photography. And again, all of that is clearly laid out in the application, but if you're thinking about participating in it, please look at those descriptions in the application very carefully. And if you'll be asked to submit images of your work, and if we see anything that we have questions on, we may reach out to you about that. So getting to the application will be open for the month of March. It is accessible via CAFE, which is callforentry.org. The application fee will be the same this year, which is $60. Everyone must apply through the application. And what I mean there is you can apply for a single booth or a double booth, and even if you're applying for a double booth with another artist that you already know, and you're both saying you want to be together, you both must apply separately as individual artists.
Tell me again, please, what CAFE stands for.
Callforentry.org.
Thank you.
One of the changes that is happening this year is based on the booth fees. Then, so let's say you've done your application, the application closed in March. In April, you hear from us that you have been accepted into the show. When you're doing your application, you can say if you want to be in an individual booth or if you want to be in a shared booth. The booth sizes are 10 feet by 10 feet, and this year an individual booth will be $700, and a shared booth will be $350 per artist. So both of those are a slight change from previous years. We got a lot of feedback on the pricing that we've used the last couple of years, and so we've tried to simplify things. We will be leaving the spacing between the booths the way they've been the last few years, which means there's no differentiation between any of the booths. There's no more corner booths. All of the booths now have the ability to use to display on the outside walls as well on the inside walls, so there's not like a premium on those spaces. But we are making a change in that this year we're going to have a number of double booths, like 4 to 5, that will be 10 foot by 20 foot placed together that can be managed by a faculty member. So years ago, before COVID actually, so COVID is what really changed the layout of SAM. But before COVID, we used to allow double booths, and we had a number of faculty members who would take the lead on bringing together a group of students that they felt confident were ready and excited to show at SAM, and they would kind of manage that process. And so we're going to make that opportunity available again. So if there is an instructor that you have worked with for many years that you think may be willing to do something like this, you should approach them and see if this would be something that they want to work with you and some other students on. First-time applicants do need to be prepared to share. That's because we really think it allows more artists to get into the show, and it also is really helpful if you've never done it before to have someone in the booth with you, helping you to learn how to set it up. And I see you in just one more minute. And one of the things that, again, that we've gotten feedback on is if you don't have someone that you are matched with, in the past we've matched you with another artist who said they wanted to share. So if you do not want to be matched, we would encourage you to talk to other students that you know and decide that you're going to apply together so that you're basically identifying your own match. That is a fine thing. You both just need to make sure that you put each other's names on your application. So like if Griffin and I want to partner, I need to put Griffin on my application and he needs to put me on his. Sometimes what happens is I put Griffin on my application, but Griffin might put Kim on his application, and then that's really awkward for everyone. So, let's see. And the only other piece of information that I have for this part of the conversation is that we are working with a new event planner this year. We're going to be working, we've signed a contract with the event planner 2 parts. They do the UMS event, the Underground Music
Showcase.
If any of you have ever been to that, the Underground Music Showcase on Broadway that happens every year, usually in June. Very fun event. They're very skilled at like outdoor types of events and overnight events, and they're really excited. They've been to SAM for years. They're really excited, and we're really excited to be working with them. I think they're bringing a new level of energy and ideas, and so there's going to be some other changes as we continue to kind of plan the event with them, and I don't have all of those changes right now, but our website we'll be continuing to build things out on our website as we learn more. Yes, you had a question.
So the shared versus the single, so is the shared 10 by 10 also?
Yes.
Okay. So you're fitting 2 in 10 by 10?
Yes, and the advantage to that is that if you are someone who has smaller work or just doesn't feel like you produce enough work to fill a whole 10 by 10, that can be a really good way to still be part of the show. It costs less, and you have a buddy for the weekend where you can coordinate. Like it's easier, I think, if you have 2 people in a booth for one person to wander away for a few minutes and take a break and all that kind of stuff. So.
And then you said you match people, so you might go just apply and you'll say we want you to share with so and so.
So if you apply and you are a first timer, you'll need to say that you're willing to share, and then if Griffin also applies and is a first timer, he'll say I'm willing to share, and we might be like, oh, these 2 people both say they're willing to share, we'll put them together.
I see.
However, if you know Kim, like I said, and you 2 want to share, just put each other, and you'll still be sharing, but you'll know then who you're sharing with. We won't be partnering you.
Okay.
You'll be partnering yourself.
Okay.
We will open to questions that you might have after we go through a few bits of information up here, okay? So just, if you have questions, just hold on to them for a few minutes. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have some questions that we developed that we thought might give you some general information, and we'll go down the table and each person will respond to the question, and then we'll go to another question. And so maybe some of the things that are set up here may lead you to a question. So just hold on to them and we'll take those kind of in a little while, okay? So the first question I have for the panel, we already talked about some advantages that they see to participating in SAM. So the first question I'm going to ask, and I'll start with Griffin this time to keep Joe off the hot seat. What specific challenges did you have in your first year that you have had to deal with and manage and have overcome?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the first time there's so much information that you're taking in. I would say the whole thing is a learning process. And so there's a lot of things that I could point to specifically. I would like to kind of focus on a few things that really centered around like the day of setup kind of stuff, right? So I'm a ceramic artist, and as a result, I need to physically bring a lot of material, right? And I'm not saying this is different for, every material is going to have, its own kind of idiosyncrasies about kind of traveling with it, but storage was something that I was really kind of struggling with, right? Because you need to be able to both display your work and keep the the booth itself in a presentable manner that's not cluttered with backup inventory, that kind of thing. So for me, it was really a kind of a strategic plan ahead of time to figure out how I can just begin the design of the booth even around like how I can incorporate storage. So for me, that was something that was really interesting. And yes, you do have a little bit of room, behind the tent that you can store a couple things. But for me, it was how can I access my excess material while not necessarily disturbing, people who were in the booth at that very moment. And so yeah, just the physicality of showing was something that I, the first time I was like, wow, this is a lot more to consider than I had thought. So. We'll go into more of that later if anybody has questions about specifics and ceramics in particular. But yeah, coming up with a game plan, figuring out how to kind of make it a functioning booth, right? Because essentially we want to create a small mobile gallery, but also being able to replenish and keep it consistent in its kind of design and vision. So, yeah.
Kim?
So my first 2 years, I shared a booth. The first year, I was assigned somebody. And so for you who are first-timers, you have to share a booth. So like Rachel said, if you know you have a buddy or a faculty member or somebody who doesn't want to, who you share, make sure you get them named. Otherwise, it's a lottery. What my tip to you would be is make sure you meet with that person beforehand to talk about your booth. I do 3-dimensional small work that you can't see until you're right there. And the person I shared with had paintings. She was lovely. She was a lovely woman. Our work was very, very different. And so it was a real challenge to set it up. I didn't have, at the time, I don't think I had banners. Might have had banners. I can't remember my first year. I take pictures now of my work that I hang in my banners to draw people in, because I have banners that hang in my booth to draw people in, because you're very small, you can't see it. So I would just emphasize, speak to the person that you share with so you can at least have some ground rules. I think if you hope you get along. I always had an assistant. I just can't do what I do without having the help. I think being flexible about how you share the booth and how it looks with your partner is going to be really important if you're a first timer. Figuring out how much work to bring can be a challenge. And Griffin already alluded to storage. So if you're doing bigger pieces like 2D works or ceramics, you have to address that. How to price and label the work so that clients, it's important to me that my clients see what the price is, because I don't want to be spending my time telling them what the price is for every piece. So I think making it really clear and visible what your prices are is really helpful, because right away if somebody sees everything's over $500 and they're not interested in spending that kind of money, they can move on, and so it keeps the traffic moving. So if price point's important, I think making those prices visible is important. How to attract people to your booth, especially if you have small work. And just trying to make your booth attractive. So the challenges are just figuring all that stuff out in advance and spending some time doing that and talking to people who've done art fairs before.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I mentioned, but I'm a 2D painter mostly. I mostly do painting. So my struggles first year probably had to do a little bit more with like along Griffin's lines, like loading things in and then loading them out. And one of the tricks is that you are bringing your work in an outdoor setting. So you're asked to unload all of your tent or whatever you have to, if you're going to set up your own system. And then you also have to unload your work from your car, and that stuff sometimes has to kind of sit next to you while you're doing other things. So it can be a little bit of a juggling act. So it's taken me a while, but I finally have gotten kind of a little bit more of a system. Like I got a cart where I can kind of put my paintings on, that they'll be safe while they're kind of on the side there, and when I'm maybe busy doing other things. Another thing that wasn't as much a challenge because I had it, but had I not had it, I would have definitely noticed, is my husband was there helping me. I had people there during the setup and during the takedown. So if you have some friends or anybody who's available, it really is nice to have the extra hands, you have a lot going on. So I would say that for sure. And then I think we're gonna get into more booth setup later, so I can talk about that, when we get there. But those are the things, I think the loading and loading out, and just kind of thinking ahead on how you're gonna pack that stuff in and out is really helpful.
The league does offer storage, minimal storage.
Minimal storage, I mean,
Um,
this is the only building that's open,
Yeah.
so there's not a lot of storage.
Yeah, so I don't know how people have used that in the past. I have to store, because I didn't have a car big enough or something, I can't remember why. I stored some display materials here the night before or something like that, the day before the setup.
Joe?
Okay, these guys have really covered a lot of stuff. I'll maybe concentrate on the days before the event. So, I think, just buy a bunch of trash bags, buy a bunch of cable ties, buy one of those big plastic tarps, because as you're loading in and loading out, they offer you just real quick options if it rains while you're actually in the middle of setting up, which is a super vulnerable time. And and then as far as the rest goes, if you have a plan, and I would have a plan, sure, for display boxes or bins or whatever, then maybe see if you can get the work in those bins and cart them that way, if that's doable. And then the other thing you can do too is pre-price in many cases. So that saves you time, it saves you thinking while you're setting up, and it might protect you against the elements. The cable ties are good because as you hang, you're sometimes on a propane, I guess, you're sometimes on a grid. But in some cases, the cable ties are super handy during wind, especially if you've got framed glass or fragile stuff. If there's any way you can attach a cable tie to it and attach it to the tent, it's much safer. So I'll leave it at that for now. I've got plenty of setup stuff that I've learned over the years, but maybe that could be just as a starter. What can you do in your studio at home before you get here?
Okay, next question. How much does marketing play a role in your participation? I mean, do you market before you're coming to the show, during the show? What kind of social media do you use so that you get people to come, like people that may know your work? How about you, Kim? You want to start?
Oh, I'm the queen of marketing. I have a pretty established business, and so I have an established business list and a monthly newsletter. The minute I know I'm in SAM, I start talking about it in my newsletter. And as it ramps up closer, I eventually do a month out, maybe 6 weeks out, an invitation to SAM. And that's the only thing in the newsletter is I'm inviting you to come. And I try to highlight things that might be new. I might give a couple of teasers of the new work I have. A lot of my people come see me every year. And so I always like to put in my newsletter something new that maybe they haven't seen before. Because I'm kind of thinking about people who are coming regularly. And on social media, I start talking about it. SAM, the Art Students League they try to give us logos and stuff as soon as possible, and I think they've been giving them earlier because they've kept the same one every year. So you can use all their logos and things that they give you, which is really great. And it's really fun on social media to see all my colleagues and friends posting, and it just looks like everybody's doing SAM, so it's kind of fun and gets people excited, like maybe I should go to this. So joining in that is really great. I give sneak peeks of my process on Instagram and Facebook and in my newsletter. I actually have gone back to, I didn't do it for a while, but in the last handful of years or so, maybe a little less, I started mailing postcards, and I do 2 art fairs that are back to back. And then if there's anything else, if I'm in an exhibition at the same time, I put it all on a postcard. And yeah, it's expensive now, but I don't mail them to everybody on my mailing list, but people who've given me my addresses, I'm kind of selective. I send them a postcard, and it's something, I try to make it attractive, so they stick it on their refrigerator, because some of my clients are older, and so they're more likely to do that. Younger clients maybe don't care so much, so I try to be cognizant of that. And I just start ramping up on the social media. That's pretty much it. During the market, I post on social media, so if clients buy something, I'm like, can I take a picture of you? Especially if they're known, and they pose. And I post videos. My daughter always does it with me, and she takes videos of all the work and of me talking, and we post it immediately while we're there, so people can see what's going on. I gather emails and addresses, and if they want phone numbers, physically there on the spot, or if people don't want to do that, I verbally tell them, you can go online if you don't want to write your name down now. You can go on to my website right now, and you can just sign up. Afterwards, I email individuals who are repeat customers. I keep a note of who comes in, and I say, thank you so much for coming. It was really nice to see you, and I make some comment about some interaction we had. I follow up with clients who expressed an interest in commissioning me. Definitely with people who gave me a deposit. I'll take deposits on commissions, especially if it's just a ring that I repeat, and they didn't have the size, and I'm like, I want that ring. And sometimes they call me, or I make a note in my book of their size and everything, and they'll call me, and I'll be like, hey. So there's a lot of follow up with people, maybe even a gallery or somebody who wants you in a show, and so you follow up with that. And I say thank you on social media. I do a little thank you thing, just saying thank you for all who came out, and if I can and I want to, and I can remember, and I've got a record of it, I tag them in my thank you posts on Instagram and social media. So
Cool.
it's before, during, and after.
Can I hire you?
I know,
Sure.
me too. I was like, wow.
Maybe that's what I'll do
You're
when I
killing it.
retire. It's a habit, and I've been in business for a long time, and all these things weren't there when I first started, and so I've just rolled them in, and I'm grateful for my young kids who keep me if I have any problem. But it's been easy for me. When I first started business, I was really into marketing. I don't know why, but I enjoy it, and it's customer service, and it's part of what I like, and it just comes natural to me. So, and I love sharing my things that I've learned with people, and because I do it, it's a habit, and I enjoy it. It's kind of effortless. I don't really think about it, but when you're just first starting doing it, it really does help to kind of like plan it out in some way, however you plan things in a calendar. To say, send out an email, send out do my postcards. It is a good idea to prompt yourself in whatever media you like, digital, written, post-it notes in your refrigerator, whatever you do. But yeah, be organized about it, and it's that repeat. There's a marketing rule that you need to see something 7 times before you buy it, or even know it's there. So, and what's cool about SAM is because there's so many artists doing it at the same time too, especially on social media. It just looks really powerful, and it's like, ooh, I don't want to, that fear of missing out. Ooh, I don't want to miss that. I want to go. So I think it's really great. I think the SAM artists are really, really good about using the Art Students League logo stuff that they give us, and it just looks really powerful. So that's why that gives it a strong sense of community as well. So, yeah.
Jenna?
Okay, well, I am not into social media, so I should be. So I will. I do before and during and after. What I do before is mostly like now. I mean, I have my website. I put up. They do some digital. What do they call them?
Logos?
Logos, thank you. The digital logos that you can just upload right onto your website that will lead people there. Some things that I do have a business card, which not everyone seems to pick up business cards anymore, but what I find that they're helpful for is if someone stops by my booth and is taking a look at an image of mine and they're really interested, I make sure I write down my booth number on the card so that when they go around and you get kind of busy and distracted, they look at my card, they see an image of my work, and they're reminded of, oh, that's the booth number, I wanted to go back and see that piece. So they can be handy for that, and also little kids love to collect them, which is adorable.
That's true.
And so those are the things that I kind of do. I do keep a mailing list, like a physical mailing list if people want to sign up during. I've thought about, but I haven't done yet, having a way for them to do that digitally and just type in their own stuff. It'd save me a step of having to enter any emails in myself. But one thing I have adopted lately is you can do a pretty easy QR code online as well. So you can print that out if you have a website, and it can just pop them right over to your website, and so they can do it on their phones, because that's so fun and great. But I have to say that when I was starting out, I had none of that. So I think it's important to know that, being and participating in the market can be the start of, how do I interact with the community, and what kinds of tools do I need to start sort of putting into my tool bag. And so you're dealing with a lot when you get started if you've never shown your work especially. And so to kind of think, oh, I need a website, I need this, I need that, it can be really overwhelming, but I don't think you have to have that to show in the market, which is really good to know. And it can be something that you build over time. Usually those things are built over time anyway. So so that would be my feedback is, don't let it feel too overwhelming at first, and just do the little things as you go.
I want to just really reiterate that point. I don't want anyone in here to feel like, well, given what Kim described, which was remarkable, if I'm not ready to do that, this isn't the market for me. I mean, I think she's showing kind of one.
I've been doing this a long time.
Right, but the beauty.
But like her, I didn't have that at the beginning. I didn't have
the
stuff.
beauty of this market and what we're doing is really giving people an opportunity to figure out how to get to that place. So you can be on the starting end of that, and maybe in a few years you'll be over here. And maybe you'll do a year and decide, I need to learn more
A little bit
before I'm
more,
ready
yeah.
to do it again.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. Like that's
Yeah.
what, like I said, that's the beauty of Summer Art Market.
Yeah. I would say bare minimum business cards for exactly what Jenna said, and also I use moo.com, as in cow, moo, because I can do Printfinity, which means I have lots of pictures. So like Jenna said, they see a picture of stuff, so if somebody looks at rings, I can find one with a ring, and they see the stack, and then I pick them up and like, pick a card, and they're like, ooh! And it's almost like they're buying a piece of jewelry, because there's so many different pictures. So having to give something for them to take away, bare minimum business cards,
Yeah, that's a nice thing.
and tell your friends.
And they're easy. You can get them on Snapchat.
Yeah, you can get cheap ones.
Yeah.
You can print your own.
To add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they had a lot of good stuff. If we're talking about a minimal and maybe even a beginner approach, I would say definitely your emails. If you don't have an email list yet, just go through your mail program and pick out the people that might like your art and form a mailing list. Then I want anyone to know that doesn't know this yet that you can go on MailChimp and some of the other programs and get a free email. In other words, you can construct a nice looking email for free there.
Yeah.
It's limited, but so that's the first thing. And then the second thing that I would like to say is for those of you who already have a little bit of social media presence, rather than, as they said, worry about all, making sure you've got a website and all the other stuff. If you're only on Instagram or something, just remember your hashtags. It indexes you to other accounts. So if you're a teeny tiny artist with a teeny tiny Instagram account, but you put Summer Art Market, hashtag Summer Art Market in the Instagram post that you've done of your latest work, and you can start now, or as soon as you know that you're going to be in the show, then what you're doing is you're indexing to other people that are using that hashtag. So if the Art Students League itself, a medium-sized entity on social media, uses that hashtag, the same one that you're using, you're basically putting yourself in a group and you're sending people their way, they're sending people your way. And then the third thing you do is you pick a gigantic one. So if you're a printmaker, or if you're a painter, just put hashtag printmaker, hashtag painting, whatever, because that indexes you, your tiny little account, into big gigantic accounts that are getting thousands and thousands of views. So just remember your emails, remember your hashtags. And as far as the other social media things you've got going on, if you, like I said, if you only have Instagram, do it on Instagram. If you only have Facebook, do it on Facebook. Just do it, and if you do those small little things, you'll eventually build up an audience, and you'll also be helping the event as a whole.
Griffin?
Yeah, it's definitely like everything that all of y'all have said is really spot on. What I would say is don't overlook organic interaction. Like, I truly do believe, and from my experience, I think it's also crucial to remember too that like this is building up to something, right? If it's your first time, you don't have to have all of these things in place, right? So as for myself, like every year I've done this, I've realized that there's something I can do a little bit better, or this is an experience to grow from. So my first year I didn't necessarily have a website that I could link to a couple other things, and so I've found that by each year I'm growing a little bit more, I'm adding more, but I still have never stopped just like shamelessly plugging it. Like everybody that asks me how I'm doing or what you're doing, and it really benefits like to be in an environment like this where you're catching up with people in the studio and, oh, what are you working on right now? Oh, here's a great time to just plug, like, okay, this is something I'm working on for a final goal, right? I'm not the best with social media marketing. That's something that I've realized as a maker, that I struggle in that aspect. So I've really had to bring in help. And that is something that has really liberated me from feeling burdened by my either lack of ability or maybe inexperience with some of these things, to relegate those to somebody who can help, and I can focus more on making. And at first I was like, oh, that's really, like, I should be doing it all, but like, it's a lot to take on. And if you have a loved, family member, somebody, a friend who can have that experience, that you can sit down and be like, hey, can you maybe help me with the, a couple things, like that is also something that I found is really valuable, to lean on those that you can lean on, and focus on the things that you have within your control at the moment. Maybe the next year you're taking on a little bit more of this or that, but with like the Instagram and all of the social media posting and all that, well, I'll generally do a post leading up to the show, but I have found that like a post during the show really does kind of draw in those people who are sitting at home on a Saturday and they're like, what am I doing? That looks pretty fun, right? To try to kind of generate that excitement in the moment is something that I've really found. Like I would post in the morning, and then I would have people come by and they'd be like, hey, we saw your post and we didn't even know this was going on. We have billboards around town, we have ad spots on CPR, so it's kind of like, if you're not going to get hit with one of those things like last minute, I might as well throw something out there and give you the opportunity to see what's happening. But yeah, I can't stress enough just organic connection to other humans in the moment over anything else is what I would say is been the most beneficial to me, is just telling people what's going on, share the excitement, and just let them know.
Okay.
Oh, may I say too?
Yes.
Back to hashtags. Create your own as well. Create one that says who you are, what you do, or something like that. Have it be brief and put it in there in the mix so that you're indexing your own self. Eventually that builds up over the years too.
So there's a lot of people walking around at SAM. How, Kim already mentioned having big banners because her work is small, and somebody really has to walk up to see her stuff in her booth. But what are some strategies you guys have for getting people to actually walk in and look at stuff that's there, with so many booths and so many opportunities of looking at stuff? How do you get them into your booth? How about you start?
I will just go with, in general, you're probably going to be bringing down a lot of small work. I can tell you that it, at least in my experience, it is what sells best. But definitely bring down your biggest, best work. Put it somewhere strategic, either where it can be seen down the row or in the back, so that if you feel like it's got enough of mystery in it, they'll have to walk into the tent to even inspect that picture. They're maybe not gonna buy it, but then your other pictures are right next to it, including some, you know, as you know, in studio practice, you might be making some similar smaller ones. So, you know, put it right next to the bigger one.
Jenna?
I'd echo that. I actually tend to bring larger work to the market. So I think of the work that has, you know, a real nice color pop, some image that's really gonna draw someone in. The other thing I mention is that during the market, I pay pretty close attention to what pieces are getting more viewership, or whatever you want to call it. So if something kind of is, if people tend to be attracted to something that I've put kind of further back in my booth, I'm not afraid of rearranging things and seeing what happens if I put it out toward the edge, if it starts to get a little bit slow. So I actually am pretty strategic about, you know, watching that happen and being a little bit loose about willing to move my booth around a little bit. And also my husband seems to get a little itchy and wants to do that for me anyway, so that's kind of fun. But that seems to help sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, and do it between Saturday night and Sunday morning too, just to shake things up. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, the only thing I'm a little careful of is if there's something getting a lot of attention and I know people might be coming back around to take a second look at it, I'm a little careful, I'm a little conscientious of moving it so that they wouldn't see it again and get their attention. So there's a little bit of a game there, but.
Griffin?
So what I've realized in the couple years that I've been doing this is, like, the first year, you know, my booth has changed quite a bit in the different iterations, and what I've found is that really giving people to physically walk in is the most beneficial thing. And so as somebody who, you know, displays ceramics, it's crucial that they sit on a flat surface, right? So we don't have the luxury of really like utilizing all 10 by 10 and like hanging at the perimeter of your tent if you have pro panel walls. So you do need to create some sort of situation for pieces to either exist. What I found is try and prevent too much crowding necessarily, right? Because if people feel like they're really crowded in a booth, they might feel like they want to walk in and walk out, or that they're in the way of somebody else who might come in behind them. So I would say just strategy too about how you're going to set this booth up. What's the flow? You know, are people entering from one way down the street? And yeah, I would also echo like putting something that's maybe a little bit of like a showstopper. Maybe at kind of the back of the booth. There's something that will draw people's eyes, right? Because initially people are going to be scanning down the rows and they might see you from one direction, maybe not the other, right? Especially if you're splitting a booth, if you have a full booth, but something that might kind of catch people's eyes, not only when you're just looking down the line, but then also when they're right in front of your booth, something that might bring them to the back of the booth, right? And then they might experience, okay, well, these are some other items, but initially, like, there was something that really drew you to the back. And I'm learning every year I do this. So I find like there's different ways to do this. Like I had a booth set up that I know I will change this year because I had a 6-foot table and that really takes up a lot of space. And it almost gives more of a merchandise look rather than a gallery look, right? Where pieces are really mounted. So I've found that creating as much vertical height as I can in different ways to kind of not only allow more space for people to kind of ruminate, come in and look around. I found that that's been beneficial. So jury's still out, I'm still working on it, but I've definitely found that that's something that I'm continuing to explore.
I think it might be helpful if we pause for a minute and see if the audience has any questions.
Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask either a specific panel member or just general to all of them? Pam?
Well, so I do a medium, I do mosaic, which is kind of a strange medium. People really don't know what it is. Do you guys ever demonstrate while you're at your booth? Like to have people kind of see the process?
I started last year knitting silver chains. And so I brought it to my booth and showed people the process and would sometimes stand there and do it. I've seen other people painting, drawing. I think most years we've had a demo scheduled. There's like a little schedule in key points throughout the market. I think one year I did a demo. I made a ring in an outside tent. So that you might get asked, or you might offer yourself up if the opportunity, because we get asked, anybody want to do this? Or faculty usually gets asked to do that because we're promoting what we do here as well. But yeah, I think as long as it doesn't keep you away from engaging with clients, I think it's really important when with Griffin, I've been in his booth, and with ceramics, people do it differently with ceramics. Like Rita Valley has a whole booth, and she has kind of like blocks and plinths. With my jewelry, I have 2 tables like this. They're 5 feet. They're in an L, but I bring them in so that my clients can stand under the protection of the tent. One thing that hasn't been mentioned, it's really hot and can be really uncomfortable. So you've got to make sure you're comfortable in your tent. And so making my clients comfortable. The other thing I've had to deal with, I don't know if anybody here is a jeweler. Is anybody a jeweler? Maybe I'm wasting my pearls. It's my work would get hot. So depending on where I am and where the sun's coming, the silver would get so hot from the sun that I would either cover it, or I'd have to warn people, please don't touch that. It's too, seriously, like you can't even touch it.
So Pam, to your question, what I have seen over the years in different booths is that artists might have some work that's in process that they're showing. So they're not working. I think that could be very difficult while you have people coming in, and you know people want to ask you about buying a piece and you're trying to complete that sale, but you could create some, I'm thinking about like Teresa Habercorn, who's a woodcut printmaker on our faculty. She'll have like blocks that are in different steps of the process in one area, different stages, and kind of show, like have a little sample of a little area where she lays out the tools so that people can understand that could lead to conversation, but she's not actually doing the work right there.
You're slammed the whole time. I can't emphasize this enough. I mean, it starts and then you're just like, oh, it's 5. I mean, you are talking with people, you are...
Well, you should be.
Yeah. But there's very little time. I mean, in reality, you're really trying to give them the opportunity to come in and experience the work.
Yeah.
It's busy. Like, that was one of my first realizations, was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
My mouth is dry. Like, you're...
Somebody over, you had a question too, right?
I was wondering what all was provided as part of the thing and how long you had to set up. So what's in the default booth, for example? Is there a structure, a table, or are you just given a square and then you populate that?
So we will assign the people who are in a spot, and then there's a company that we work with, and you would go as an artist onto the company's website and select what you need. And you can select nothing to everything. So if you select everything, the advantage to that is you're paying for it, but the company will come in on Friday morning very early and set up everything for you. And then when you're given a slot later on Friday to drive your artwork in, all you have to do is put your artwork in there. If you select nothing, you have to come in after that happens. So you have a different time slot and set up your tent first, which some of the people on the panel have described, and then put your artwork in. So, and you can do kind of things in between there as well. So you could get a tent, you could have them set up the tent, and then maybe you do your own design inside, like what Griffin was describing. If you're a 3D artist, you're gonna bring in pedestals and all the things that you're gonna put in inside, you're gonna have them to the tent. But it's really up to you, and we will provide you the source for that. What we won't allow you to do is if you're renting a tent from somebody else, you can't rent a tent from somebody else. If you're renting a tent, it has to be through the company that we're providing, because it just won't work logistically otherwise.
And how much does it cost in general, like overview, to rent a tent?
It's around $250 to rent the tent, $225, just the tent.
Yeah,
that doesn't include hanging walls or anything else that goes in there.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Somebody in the, yes.
I have a question. Day of, what's your approach for interacting with visitors that come to your booth?
That was one of my questions, actually.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Well, the question I had was, what strategies can you share about where to stand, where to sit, where to position yourself for your best access with visitors? I know some people sit on a high stool or director's chair. Yeah, I mean, what works best? Kim has to be behind her counter because she's got her display thing. So it kind of, some of it just depends, I think, on your particular display, but
I have some
maybe,
strong thoughts on this.
yeah.
Well, and is that what you're asking, like where you're?
Exactly.
Yeah, great.
Like where you position yourself.
Yeah, so I personally have some strong thoughts on this. I go to art fairs as well as do them. There's nothing more off-putting to me than seeing an artist sitting in the back of their tent, like trying to avoid people. I mean, I might actually know them, so I'll go up and say something, and I might even tease them about it. But don't do that. Obviously, if it's quiet and you're getting hot, because you do. I mean, it's hard, man. It's hard work. But greet everybody who comes into your tent. At least acknowledge them. And if you have somebody with you helping you, don't rely on if you are sharing a booth, don't rely on your booth mate to do it, because somebody might be interested in your work and not their work. So if you see that happening, you've got to read their body. One of my big tips is pretend these are my feet. This is the booth. If the person's feet are like this right in front of your booth, they're interested. If one foot or both feet are to the side, they're just kind of checking it out. And if you see their feet move, start talking to them because they're interested. I'm not lying. I've told this tip to many people, and no one's come back to me and said, "You were wrong, Kim." I am absolutely right, and I use this because I'm standing there and I might be talking to somebody, or I see somebody's actually starting to pick up and try on rings, multiple rings. So they're trying to find one. The Cinderella ring is what we call it. When they're trying to find the Cinderella ring, and somebody over there is kind of like 1 foot like this, till that other foot goes over. And if I'm busy over here, I nudge my daughter. I'm like, "They're ready. Go engage." But you've got to say hi. And there are people as you get more experienced, you'll just figure out. I've been doing this a long time, and I know in an instant if someone's interested or not. So part of it is you going up to them, not hugging them and going, "Hi, how are you doing today?" Just hey, hi, thanks for coming into my tent. And then and just say, "Hey, if there's anything if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them."
Do you have an elevator pitch, or are you just saying hi?
I keep it light and breezy. The hard sale doesn't work. This is not a used car sales lot. And it's keep it casual. Just, you want to make them feel welcome, like they can engage with you, because that is the beauty of this. And the thing that we're selling is that you get to talk to the artists, and they may not actually be interested in your artwork. They might be like going, "Are you a faculty member?" And you're like, "Yeah." And then I said, "What classes do you teach?" And then I can use my work as an example. "Oh, I teach you how to weave these chains, and we make bangles, not quite like that, but more so like this." And so the whole point is to engage with somebody, even if they don't buy from you that day. If you had a good experience in their tent, especially if they take a card, you don't know how people are making a note of you. They might run into you later at another market. You're building relationships. So treat everybody like they're going to spend $1 million in your booth, and just give them space. And some people are really clear. It's like, "I'm just looking." And if they're like that, you just give them space, and you just listen to them. They're telling you what they want to do. And I see selling as I'm a guide. I'm not trying to force something. I really don't want people to buy things that they don't really want. I want them to find the thing. So if a ring doesn't quite fit, I'm like, it's hot, your fingers are probably swollen, come to my studio. I try to give other options so they don't have to make an instant decision. I want them to feel comfortable and I want them to be happy so that they'll keep coming back.
Griffin?
Yeah, I would say that being pushed into something is never going to really encourage anybody. So definitely keep it casual. I would say in my terms, I always try to kind of just start a conversation like, "Oh, are you into ceramics? Have you ever worked with clay?" Right? Just started just a get to know you, kind of just create a bridge, right? "Oh, you've never? Okay, well, have you ever been interested in working with material like that?" Just anything to really kind of create a human connection with them, I would say. And then even if they're not interested in buying, like, they can still learn something. And sometimes, like, I've seen people that have just gone from like not even interested to like, oh my goodness, this is so much more difficult or challenging than I thought. And then that kind of almost creates this sense of desire, right? So I don't think you're ever gonna like necessarily convince somebody into buying something that they don't wanna buy, but we can give them more information to make decisions with. And so in terms of just giving people that space, I know that when I walk into a store and I'm just being like hawk-eyed, right? Like where I'm shopping, what I'm picking up, sometimes that makes me feel uncomfortable. So sometimes, like I just like Kim said, I would, let me know if there's anything I can do to, answer any questions, or if there's any other, items that you're looking for. I might have some other options. If there's a color you're specific about, let people just kind of naturally have their curiosity drive them to what they're interested in. Don't force them.
Asking open-ended questions are better than yes or no questions.
Yes.
So, like, have you ever worked with ceramics? Well, I wouldn't say have you ever worked with ceramics. I'd say, what is your experience with ceramics? So they have to tell you. They can't say no.
Yeah.
That's not the right. They say, oh, I've taken I've taken several classes here at the Art Students League, and then again, you've made a connection.
Yeah, and one thing I would say is I want people in the booth. I don't want to be in the booth necessarily. I want more space for people to be in the booth, right? So if I have somebody who's engaging, then I might kind of draw them to the side and we're having more of a conversation. People will naturally kind of cluster to where groups are gathering. Yeah. So if you see that people are kind of like starting to appear around, this is like, you'll see it around food trucks. You'll see it around, I'm like, is their food truck necessarily better? No, they just have a bigger line, and people kind of take that as an indication
that's true.
of like,
people like lines.
They have something really desirable, and so I want to get in that line even though it's going to take 30 minutes. I've noticed that when I clear out and I kind of allow more space within the booth, sometimes it'll be like a little congregation of people out front in the street. People see that from the end of the block, right? They're like, oh my goodness, there's a bunch of people kind of clustering over there. What's that, right? And if I can pull myself out, allow more space for people to come in and interact with the work, get their interest piqued, and then almost kind of pull myself out, but let them peruse, I've found that that's really useful. And again, my space is vital. The amount of space that I have, because I need infrastructure to support the items themselves. I don't want to be taking up a third of the booth where they feel like, they can't get behind me. I want to get their interest, kind of step aside.
They don't want to break anything.
Exactly, yeah. When you're in a crowded space, people naturally want to disperse. So I would say, like I'll generally have a chair, right? Director's chair, something sitting next to I'll sit occasionally, but like the reality is I'm on my feet the whole time. And if it's really crowded, then I'll kind of pull myself out, allow people to kind of circulate.
I think it's really nice to compliment someone on something. So I've noticed that if you notice someone has some really cool shoes on, you'd be like, I really love your shoes. It's like a very soft open to a conversation where they're not feeling like they're going to get a sales pitch from you. So that's kind of like been a natural thing. Obviously, I'm genuine compliment. But the other thing that people love a good story. You're there as an artist, and the unique thing about being there as an artist and being able to engage with the people who are looking at your work is they don't get to talk to the artist all the time. They might go online and look at an image and be able to flip through, or they might go to a gallery, but very rarely do they get a chance to actually understand like why you made something or how you made something. So people tend to be pretty interested in that, and then the best sales usually come from that, or the best opportunity from sales really come from that. And I have had the most interesting and amazing conversations with people. So regardless of a sale, like it's just like, how interesting is it to have someone come up to you and then tell you, this reminds me of this vacation I had where there's these freshwater jellyfish in this lake somewhere, and you're like, are you kidding me? That's crazy. So I know it's push, sell. Sometimes, I mean, it is, some of us, this is our livelihood, but this is also a chance for you just to kind of have that cool interaction with other people and share your love of art with them. And so that I find, if you have that genuine kind of sense about you, that pulls people in and makes them want to talk to you about what you're doing too.
Absolutely. You're not just selling a product. I mean, you're selling a little piece of yourself, and making those connections it's so powerful. And like, Jenna said, it's the stories. They want to hear the stories, and they don't really get to talk to artists. Sometimes people are really intimidated about talking to artists. So if you initiate that through a compliment, or I actually, an unusual one last year, there was a woman wearing a kind of a crop top, and I could see her tattoo, and I could see that it looked like some sort of insect. I said, is that a bee? And I have this obsession with bees. And she's like, yeah. And it was so fabulous. Can I take a picture of it? And so, you know, and she didn't buy anything or anything, but she had a really nice positive experience. And it's just a great way. I mean, I think I like people, and I like to know why they're interested in my work, and I sometimes learn a lot surprising things about my work that I didn't know. So don't think of it as just a one-way street, that, you know, you trying to sell to them. You might get something from them, and you might learn something about your work too.
Yeah.
Joe, anything to add?
Yeah, treat it like a conversation,
Yeah.
really. Stay away from, if you feel you're starting to sound like, well, nobody wants a used car salesman, we all know that. But if you feel like you're starting to sound like a teacher or a job interviewer, you know, where you're, so stay away from that, treat it like a conversation, and most of it is going to be about listening. So my advice is to formulate in your mind, or even write it down, a small paragraph that you would tell everybody if you could. That paragraph isn't something that's a speech or something that you're going to try and deliver as soon as they get in the booth. That paragraph is something that you're going to interject whenever they invite you into a conversation with them. So if you're saying, hello, because as these folks said, everyone gets greeted. This is just job one. And then, as someone else said, give them a little space. You can tell by their eye movement and their body language whether they're starting to think about your work. They're having a conversation with your work. That's really what's happening. And then at some point, their body language or something they say, some open-ended thing, allows you in. You can drop a little nugget from your paragraph, if that helps you to remember what to say. And then give them a little bit more space. And if they're still there, chances are you're going to get plenty of opportunities to drop those little observations in, you know, like I make monotypes, it's a one-of-a-kind print. Keep them short, keep them brief. I really don't think you have all that much time with these people. And you know, and then of course make another little paragraph about your subject matter too. It is of interest to people, so say that I'm working with nature, you know, the things that are happening with the environment or nature or something like that. And so have those two little blurbs ready, but don't force it into the conversation. Let it be like a cocktail party where the conversation just comes to you. By the time you've gotten through 2 or 3 of those little nuggets, you're going to know pretty much whether they're interested in buying or not. And then you just do what comes naturally. And it really can happen pretty quickly. But you've got to listen, and you've got to give them a little time to formulate their own conversation.
Yeah. Can we take any other question? Anybody else out there? Go ahead.
So for sales, are you guys holding a cash box, or are you doing only digital transactions?
You're responsible for handling all your end sales.
And taxes too?
Yes.
So do bring cash to have on hand. You do want some small bills to be able to, you know, give change if you need to. And so that was one thing when I was first new, I didn't even think about that. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to have change with these people. And then I've been using Square for a long time. It's really easy. It just, they either have the little Square that like hooks right into your cell phone, or now they do a touch. I think just, you know, you can touch your card to your cell phone. I have an Apple phone, so I don't know if it's true for all phones, but real easy. You just set up your account and you set it up to your bank account, and then the Square payments go through. And then what you have to do is transfer those funds later. So just so you know, it doesn't hit your account. Not all the services hit your account right away. I don't think you're technically supposed to use Venmo for like cash sales, like multiple cash sales. I don't think that's the purpose of Venmo, but we have used that before as well. But that's very simple. But do have that set up before. And if you want to do a test before you you come out with it, make sure your phone's working okay, have someone send you $1 or send yourself $1 or something, just to make sure all that works. That's really important to do.
And don't feel like you have to remember all of
No.
that sort of detail today. Again, as it gets closer, if you're an artist who's been accepted into it, there's a very detailed artist packet that we make available on the website that says, when you just mentioned, and yes, you're responsible for taxes. Others of you might have been like, what does that mean? How do I do that?
Yeah.
We'll send you information on where you apply for the state and the local sales tax forms for the weekend, and all of that. So you don't have to know that today.
But I do have a good money question for the panel, and that is, how do you deal with buyers who want you to discount your work, either through multiple purchases or whatever? I mean, is that an issue for you, and how do you handle it?
Me? Yeah, that's a big yes. There's, for one thing, we should talk about pricing, but for one thing, you can always make your prices at the top end of what you hope you can get, and then you have room to come down. So as soon as you're in that conversation that I spoke about, and as soon as they make any mention of pricing, I should say of bargaining, then yeah, go with 10% right then and there. I mean, don't even wait. It's not 10%. You'll never think about 10% 2 years from now. Do the 10%. The multiples, I'll go 15. It's multiple purchases, sure. I just do it, but I know other people have other opinions about that, so I'll leave that.
I agree. I mean, I agree with the idea of what Joe's saying. It's just kind of, before I price something, I have an idea of how much I would be willing to part with it for. So like, I know I would be, like, let's say I have $1,500 on a painting. I know I'd be okay taking $1,250 for it before someone even walks up to me. So I don't get into a weird, awkward, conversation in my head. So I think just being prepared for that, like knowing you're willing to go down a certain amount right away. And then like Joe said, just be ready to, if you want to sell it. Now, when you're pricing, I think what's important, and I would recommend, is think of that thing. And if you think, oh, if I sold that for $50 later, I'd regret having sold it for only $50, then you haven't priced it probably high enough. Like if you don't want to just give your stuff away, because you can use that stuff in other shows or other markets and stuff like that. So value your own work and your own self, and you have to kind of feel good about whatever price that is that you part with. Yeah.
I try to build a 10% discount into most of my prices, at least my higher end stuff. Most of my collectors, and these are people who buy from me regularly, because they buy so much from me, as long as they're paying with check or cash or Venmo or Zelle, i.e. not a credit card, so I don't lose out on the fees, I always give them a 10% discount. They don't need to buy multiples for that. If somebody's buying like a $500 ring and a $200 pair of earrings, I'll give them a 10% discount if they ask or not. It also depends how things are going. I've only been asked once to come down on a price that I can remember when it happened, so I think it has only been once. And I'm personally insulted by it because it's like asking me to take a pay cut. So I say no. I'm the one offering the discount. I don't like when people ask me for a discount. Yeah. It's like asking me to take a pay cut. Yeah. So I give it to the people who are regulars, or if they're buying like 2 or 3 pieces. And especially if they're buying 2 or 3 pieces, it's a way of me saying thank you, and because it means a lot, because they really like it. And so they're a collector right away.
Yeah. Agree with what everyone said. I would also second that, them asking for a discount right off the bat is not how that relationship starts, right? It is yours to give, not theirs to ask, right? And especially if it's something that, yeah, you're willing to do, the mental math. Okay, am I willing to walk away today with maybe a slight bit less, but then my inventory is, my shelving space is freed up, and I'm gonna make more work anyways. It's a little calculation for you to do at the moment. And certainly, yeah, especially if people are interested in buying multiples. I make a lot of functional work, so people are like, well, I want a set, right? And so, okay, if you're gonna do a set, then yeah, we can certainly enter into that discussion. I don't necessarily go right out the gate with that, right? I want them to show the interest first. I want them to give me that little bit of initiation, and that gives me the reassurance, okay, well, you're willing to, maybe buy a few more items, and yeah, then I can kind of rationalize what that, is for me if I'm willing to do that. But yeah, right out the gate, I want to value the items I make, because this is my livelihood. I don't want to discredit myself. This is the prices that I put on my objects, because this is the amount of time, energy, emotional well-being that I sacrifice in order to make them. And yeah, I'm the one who gets to decide if that's something that's offered. So.
And you've got to be charging the tax. So I'll have people say, if I pay cash, do I have to pay the tax? And the answer is yes, because I'm breaking the law if I don't charge you tax. I'm making a sale, and by not charging the sales tax, I'm ripping off my state, my city. So if you treat yourself professionally, they will treat you professionally. This is not a little haggle market where you're selling cheap wares. This is, like Griffin keeps saying, it's our livelihood. This is how I make a living. So I'm not going to haggle with a lawyer. So don't haggle with me. You're going to haggle with your plumber that I had at my house today.
And on the tax thing, I just want to say, the city knows when we're having these events, so they actually send around people to make sure that everyone's complying. So if somebody asks you that, they could be somebody testing to see if you're complying, and if you're not, you could get in a lot of trouble. So you're always charging the tax.
May I add? As regards discounts, whether you do or you don't, I would have a good, strong conception of what your prices are. And I would actually think about using price points. So pick some price points that will work for you, that will give you a successful show. Say, 200, 500, 1,000, just as an example. And then you're not, Jenna alluded to this too, you're not hemming and hawing if you're having a conversation about price. Know the prices when you walk in, and that means sitting down and thinking of, you can even put your work in separate piles, but know what that stuff is and give them the answer, and then allows you to keep them consistent. The prices should always be consistent, and you should always be able to explain why this one is this price and this one is this price. But the other thing it allows you to do is, if you decide to give a discount, you know exactly where you're sitting on that. You know whether you can afford to give them 10%. So, that's my advice, is to sit down and work out a plan for your prices early.
And I think the idea of having multiple price points is really important, because if someone really likes your work and they're finding the piece they like too expensive, having these different price points allows them to become a collector of your work, and maybe later they'll come and buy a more expensive piece.
And they do.
And they do, yeah.
The other thing about price points is, if you've got them and they make sense to you, it continues the next year, you're good. But the thing is, if the work turns out to be far more popular than you expected, you just move it up a price point.
Yep.
You didn't change anything. You are still covering the price points, but you're getting more money. This is, of course, long-term stuff, but you're getting more money for stuff that turned out to be crazy popular. So price points are nice.
Sometimes you get
something that works, and then see if you can continue it each show.
And sometimes you have to learn the hard way.
Yep.
And we have a question, I see.
It might be too personal, I don't know if you guys want to answer, but I was just wondering, did all of you break even the first year, or does it take a couple of years before you cover the costs of application and booth?
Every year's different.
Yeah, every year's different.
And you could be first time, have half booth, and you could have the greatest thing since sliced bread, and you sell out. And everybody's like giving you the evil eye, like, who is she? But they're jealous. But I mean, they're also like really happy for you. But then you're like, what happened? Well, you priced your work too low. And so you've learned a lesson. Last year I had one of the worst shows I've had. And I've never really had a bad show. And it was hard. And I wasn't happy. And it wasn't my work. It was just not, everybody said it was an election year. But I know somebody 2 doors down sold $13,000 worth of work. And breaking even, when you're doing it first time, yeah, that's a good goal. Because you're only paying $350 for a booth, should be hard to do. Obviously, if you're renting a booth, I've always had a tent. I've been fortunate in being able to have a tent. If you can borrow a tent from somebody who you know, who's not doing a show that weekend, borrow one from somebody. But I think for $250 to have somebody put up your tent's a pretty good deal. If I didn't have one, I would do it.
All of the
It's
years
pretty
that I
great.
was in it, I always rented the booth just because I have one. I mean, I always rented the tent, and
Yeah,
it is
it is pretty great.
Especially
If it rains.
If you're not someone who does this all the time,
Yeah.
like, you're going to be thinking about so many other things related to your work.
It's-
also
yeah.
trying to figure out the tent, to me anyway, was overwhelming.
I mean, I'm lucky. I have a great tent that goes up really easy, and I have a 24-year-old daughter who helps me, so it's not hard. Yeah. And now she works for me.
I know, right?
She works for
Sure,
me.
her around.
But no, but I think absolutely, if I didn't have a tent, I'd be doing the $250 because they don't have to worry about setting up. That's probably
And
the worst thing.
I do just want to say thank you, Jenna, for sharing that number, but I don't know what the number's going to be this year, so.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't, yeah, it's a new thing. But in
A
the
new
past,
number?
that's what it was
Yeah.
for the other company.
Yeah.
The number?
The number for the tent amount.
Oh, yeah, I don't know
It
how much
always
is.
was, it
that
has historically
rental.
been around
The
225.
250, we're saying that a lot.
We're saying that a lot.
We should be clear, we don't know
Don't
the
hold me to
price.
that.
Can I go back to breaking even? Again, have a price point. The price point is going to come from your peers. If you know people that are doing stuff that's similar to you, have similar experience, ask them straight out, what they're charging. And, shoot for something around there. Then, if you have a price point in mind, how many of those do you need to sell to break even? Then if you've got some slightly larger work that you're hoping to sell, and okay, maybe you won't sell it, it's possible. How many of those would you need to almost break even? Or in other words, you can sort of put the whole thing as a whole picture, and it helps you set your prices. I can break even if I sell 3 of these and 1 of these. I mean, it might help you. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you're somewhere near where your peers are, and you're able to sell a few things, then yeah, you should be able to break
Yeah.
even. I don't think it's unusual at all.
I will add also, the break even, that doesn't even begin to account for the amount of time
Yep.
and work that you
You
have
don't
put
really
into
break
make
even.
that artwork. So that is just
not
getting you
breaking
out of
even.
the red.
Yeah, right.
And so if
Yeah.
we really want to be realistic with ourselves, maybe make yourself a break-even point that is above what the booth fee rentals are, plus sweat equity, plus some of these other things that, I mean, if we really want to think about it, right? Like, there's a lot that goes into this too. So like, yes, if you did just make your booth fee, that's wonderful. And for some, that might be like, this is the first time I just want to start
Yeah.
selling my work. That
Yeah.
might be a great benchmark to have, but just
Yeah.
don't shortchange yourself in realizing that the time and effort that you are putting into making this work is also valuable.
Yes,
And the good point is that if you undersell yourself, you're also affecting people.
absolutely.
Right.
So
Thank you for saying that. That's hard, that's tough.
A couple more questions.
I just wanted to ask practical questions, like, because when I did the window art market, it was covered, so I guess we do the booth fees only for the space, and then since there's some, you do need to get the tent separate, right?
Yes.
And then if you're hanging anything, like a painting or frame, you need to also rent those fence, or
Yes.
that comes with?
Yes, you need to rent those separately. So again, if let me just reiterate, right, if you're accepted, we're telling you, you have square number 28, you then need to decide what you're putting into square 28. You can borrow a tent, you can have, maybe you have your own tent, whatever. We will provide information about a company from which you can rent a tent that would be covered and have 4 walls, although you need to make sure you tell them you want the 4 walls.
Walls meaning the fabric, not the,
They zip up.
Because you want to close it at night. And then if you need the hanging wire grids, they also have those, and you would need to tell them how many of those you need. And you also had a question.
Yeah, I had a question for Griff. You're a ceramic artist. How many pieces do you bring to the show?
It's a great question. When I am thinking of inventorying prior to the show, I am in the ballpark of, and again, this was for 2 days of a half booth. I was thinking 150 to 200 pieces. Did I sell that many? No. However, I had the flexibility to be able to pivot if something was selling and something was not, right? So I kind of insured myself within different forms, right? I might have a couple different forms that are similar, and I did multiples of those. So there's so many ways to think about prepping, right? And specifically for ceramics, right? We can go into price point, number of objects, total kind of vision for a booth. But I would say if you are thinking of sharing a booth, think about between 50 and 100 items.
And you have to have enough artwork to make it through the weekend. So we have had, from time to time, artists who said, well, I sold out on Saturday, so I'm not going to come on Sunday. Well, you can't do that. I mean, if you do that, you won't make it into SAM the following year. Because if half the artists did that, then imagine what the place would look like on Sunday when people come. So you need to be thinking about making enough work that you're going to get through 2 days.
Prepare like you're going to sell everything.
Somebody in the back, and then.
I had a question mostly for Joe. If I also make works on paper, do you frame everything, and if not, how do you display works that aren't framed?
Yeah, that's another excellent question that needs to be covered. I'll go with just my strategy. Pick out the best ones, the brightest ones. We already talked about putting something in the back of the booth that you're really proud of, and frame those. I would say, as a matter of advice, do not cheat on frames, because unlike the booth, the tent fees, the frames don't go away. You get to use them next year. You can use them, if it's a durable frame, you can probably use it 3 years, sometimes 4 years. If it's a cheap frame, yeah, they're bunged up by the 2nd year or the 3rd year. So see if you can put as much as you can out on frames. Do as many as you can, because people do definitely like framed work, especially experienced art buyers that tend to buy bigger stuff, because they've learned that if they buy just an unframed piece, it sits in a drawer for 2 years. So do have the option of frames. Now, however, a lot of people do like to do their own framing, or, make their own decisions on framing. And a lot of people do like to buy unframed work, so have a lot of unframed work. As far as that goes, scrap mat board, scrap foam core that you've used for your framing, save that, cut it to a size, buy some bags to match, and bag them up. They're super durable. You can use them year after year, and you can put a little price sticker on the back. I will say back, I like it when they flip it. Then I know they're interested. They're already thinking about what the price is. So I do say price on the back. And
then you put those in a bin, right? You have
Yeah,
a bin,
and those-
some sort of something in your tent where people can flip through those.
yeah, and those go in bins. Let's see, you can use little wire baskets that could be found at a Container Store. You can use even these storage bins if you can find a relatively attractive one. You can use wooden apple boxes or stuff like that. That's what I use. And again, I mentioned this before, then you can just put the stuff in there before the show and cover it up with a trash bag, carry it down, and it's ready to go. And by ready to go, I mean, and your strategy may differ, but I mean that it's got a little bit of the $100 artwork, a little bit of the $200 artwork, and so on down the line. It's got colors, it's got different types of things, and the other bin has a similar assortment. So you're preparing something that is ready to go and has different stuff in there. And pretty much if you have, we'll go back to the numbers here, if you're doing a full booth yourself, if you can get 100 pieces, and I know that's not always possible, but if you can get 100 pieces of the bagged or shrink wrapped stuff, and then 30 framed pieces, you can fill a booth and you can do pretty well. And then I guess one other thing I'll add, I know I'm talking a lot, but if you go on YouTube, learn how to frame in a simple way. For printmaking, what's great is you can just float it. It's basically a piece of foam core, a nice frame, and then little pointers in the back. If you can come up with a system where you can pull the stuff out in 10 minutes, or even in an hour, while they go get a beer, then you can sell frame stuff for an unframed price. You're giving them an option. And again, going back to the price points, always know what the frame stuff is, always know what the unframed version of a similar thing is, be able to tell them why they're those prices, and be able, if they say, can I buy that unframed, to just pop it out of the frame, and they can come back at the end of the day and pick it up. So that's the value of price points, and that's the value of a good sturdy frame. So I guess that's, I hope I answered the question.
Can I speak one thing to that too, Joe? I think you kind of mentioned it, but I think because you're experienced, this felt to me because I was helping the teens learn how to do the art market the last couple years. If you're starting to make work that you're going to want to frame, and it works on paper, or you're going to mat them or whatever, think about the standard sizes before you make them. Because if you just make work on paper and then you have to go buy a custom size frame, it's very expensive. And also, you have those bags that Joe mentioned that you can buy to like slide in your bin work to, and then you can pop them all in, they're the same size. And then if you do what Joe said, you can pop them out of frame. If the frames are all standard sizes and your stuff's standard sizes, you can switch them in and out.
Right back in.
So, yeah.
If not that show, then the next show.
Yeah.
And as to the standard sizes, then I'll just mention Meinigers. They do have they used to. They've been cutting back on their, but they do have frames you can assemble. But they used to have the pre-made. However, Michaels has pre-made frames. So if you're finding the nicest pre-made frames, you're going to see that they're in standard sizes. See if, I know this sounds kind of mechanistic, but see if you can make something that will fit a standard size frame. You're saving yourself a lot of time, a lot of money, and especially for the smaller work, you're able to do a lot of it yourself. Just pop it in and pop it out, and be ready for people that want to buy smaller work, which I think is a big crowd.
Mm-hmm.
So I know, because I've been to Sam before, right out front here is kind of the premium spots. How do you guys choose who gets what spot?
There is no premium spot.
Yeah, there really isn't.
And that is very true. And I mean, I've been doing this for, as many years. It's that people sell work. We have people who say, I hated this spot, it's the worst spot, and the year before, the person there sold $13,000. Okay. So they truly are all the same.
They're no prime
and they are completely randomly assigned.
Okay.
I don't know how many of them there's been. I think there's been something like 35 Sams. I've been in something like 32 of them. I've been all over. Mm-hmm. I've had good years and bad years in all of those spots, including this whole thing out front. It is fun to be out front because most of us know each other, but you can have fun with your neighbors in the other areas too.
And I've worked the gate for the past couple of years, 3 years, maybe 2 years. Anyway, when people come to enter the market, they all very regularly are asking for a particular artist. It's either somebody they've taken a class from, work they've purchased before, someone they know, someone told them to look for them. And so they are going to go to wherever you are. We have maps, and they're looking for specific people. So if you're, wherever you are, they will find you.
Let me go back, before I know she'll find you for your question, but let me go back to hashtags and social media. You can start as soon as you get your booth numbered. Hashtag Joe Higgins booth 59. Yeah, help them find you. Put it on all your Instagram posts, put it in your Facebook posts.
So.
I know that the woman in the very last
Well,
row did.
actually, the woman in the front with the scarf had her hand up first.
Okay.
Hey there. What is the security at night? Do you take your work home? You mentioned zipping it up.
I do.
It's kind of up to you what you want to do. Kim does for, I think,
It's jewelry.
obvious reasons.
I'm gonna
We
leave
do have security who's here throughout the whole night. I mean, but they're not at every booth. So, you know, this is still a neighborhood. I mean, and they have walkie-talkies, and they're wandering around, and they're really trying to make sure that everything is taken care of. But if you have anything that really is of value, we recommend you take it home. And again, that you have the walls on your tent so that you can zip it up, so that it wouldn't be easy for somebody to just don't just leave your tent open for somebody to walk in.
Do most people take their stuff home at night?
I do not.
I was
do
gonna
not.
say,
I would say most people don't.
Setup is so
I-
mental. Yeah.
I utilize the storage facility here overnight for stuff that is of a certain value. But I'll also add another trick. And also, I will say that I've never heard of anyone having anything.
No,
happen.
I've never heard of-
I haven't either, so not that
I mean, I have had
30
stuff
years
stolen
worth.
during the show, but not.
I kind of
when I
like the
wasn't
idea,
there.
if someone's gonna haul away one of my giant paintings down the thing in the middle of the night, I'm like, man, you earned that, baby, you go. No, I'm just kidding. You
I
don't.
will,
But it would be hard in some situations for them to.
I will add one thing, cable ties, just make it hard.
Yeah.
You know, you can, and this is great for wind as well, if you have glass frame pieces. Just get a cable tie and attach it to your grid. You can also zip down your tent at night with the little zippers. You can cable tie the zippers. Just make it hard. And I think that's going to help a lot. Of course, do remember to bring a scissors in case somebody buys at work.
Do you need zip ties?
Yeah.
Zip ties.
Zip ties, yeah.
You were next, and then there's somebody in the back, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for a new participant, what would your recommendation be for pricing, those pricing points? What those points should be? And then in terms of inventory, I guess I think of it as a pyramid, like you should have a few at the top dollar, and then more at the middle, and then a lot at the lower price point. Like, is that right? And
Yeah.
then like tactically, within those price points, what do you find to be more popular?
I feel like we
Kind of
could have a
work do you
whole
do? This
2 hour
could be
session
like-
A whole
on
2 hour
price
session.
points.
Yeah,
Everyone
yeah,
does
it's
it
on the
different.
work.
And also, it depends on your media,
Yeah.
so.
But again, presumably you're here using the studios or taking classes or something, so talk to your peers. And also go to shows, find your peers, find people that have similar work. Just see what price they're charging. I know it doesn't provide a be-all, end-all answer, but it'll guide you. As far as what's actually happening, in my experience, I'm finding that most of the sales are between, well, I mean, I don't have anything under 100, but I'm finding most of the sales are between 100 and 500. Most of the quantity of sales. I mean, you obviously can sell some big stuff, and that's great.
So
Is
my,
that a little bit
oh,
helpful?
for me, one of the things I think about, like, I've heard some artists do it by size, you know, they kind of have a sizing situation. some artists, you get asked by people, how do you price your things, which is really interesting. You're like, well, okay. But you have to think about the time and the intensity that you put into it. So, I mean, and I think this is what Rachel's like talking about, the different media, it just depends. But like for me, for example, like I might spend the same amount of time on a smaller work as I would on a larger piece, because I work pretty fast on larger stuff. And so for me to bring a whole bunch of little things and sell them for a lot less, it's like, well, I can sell one of these big ones, or I can sell 5 of these little guys. And so you just kind of have to know a little bit of your process and like what feels right for that kind of pricing a little bit to you. And you can't go by hourly necessarily, but you can think about that a little bit in
And
what you're doing.
I also think, I mean, I spend a lot of time with a lot of artists. I'm an artist too, and I think there are times when there's a particular piece of work that you price higher because it is very meaningful to you for some reason, and it may be the same size or smaller than the piece over here that is, you know, a lower price, but you're pricing it higher because if it sells, you want to feel really, really good about that you're letting it go out into the world. I go back, I wrote down whoever said, one of you said you're not selling a piece of art, you're selling a little piece of yourself. Did you say that? And I think sometimes that those little pieces of yourself are more valuable to you.
It's true.
And so you're pricing the work that way. And it
sells. It sells.
But I always think about that, like what is the price that I will feel okay for this going? And some of the pieces, you know, like they are just in those category. Like this is, you know, these are, but there are those other ones where they might not fit the mold and feel okay to make those a higher price.
And those are good stories to tell in the booth. Why?
I mean, I find
School and they're heavy, and I've never bought the pro panels, and if you're doing Cherry Creek, then I'd say you'd probably have to have the pro panels. But because it's a summer art market and it's kind of relaxed, I just use the grids because they're cheaper and I've already got them. Then you can either, you can get little hooks from the hardware store and hang stuff on. And like I say, I sometimes do use the cable ties for stability to hang. But as far as the pro panels go, I guess my advice to all of you guys is there's a little bulletin board across from the registration desk in the main building. Keep an eye on that from now on, because now is the time when people decide, oh, I'm done doing shows, it's too much work, and they sell stuff. So you might get something for cheap, something very nice looking. The pro panels are obviously quite nice looking. I've seen people, there's some netting that you can use, and you can put little hooks in that. And I've seen people make screens with kind of like a burlap or some sort of tough fabric that they can hang on. It's a tough question. It might be the toughest question about setup, is how do you display it. The grids are, in other words, you can buy the grids if you want, but you can also, as Rachel said, get them from the company. They're cheaper than anything else. They work pretty good. And the other thing is, if the wind comes up, they do tend to give a little. You're using bungee cords and cable ties, but with the wind, which I consider to be a worse enemy than the rain, really. But with the wind, they will give a little, and so you don't worry as much with the grids. I don't know what these guys think.
So when I was my very first market, I was pretty young, and I lived in a 1-bedroom condo with 2 kids and 2 cats and my husband, and we took all the doors off of all the rooms in my condo, and we painted them solid, and then we set them up because I had no money to purchase anything. Going back, I think that I have no idea what the cost is of the grid panels now, but to rent grid panels is pretty inexpensive. I think it's, you know, it's under, for a 10 by 10, I think it's gonna be under 100 for you. If you are not sure you're gonna stay wanting to keep doing this, keep doing it, I would probably rent something this first time out and not have to worry about putting it up. As far as aesthetically, you know, it's you know, utilitarian looking. I now, because I've done it long enough, I have a custom built by my husband's setup, which is like burlap covering, you know, these things, and it kind of fits together in this way. I can move it, I can change its setup. It's kind of silly, but I have to store it, which is a whole nother thing. So you want to think about, if you do purchase things, then you have to have a place to store it, and those things are also something to consider. I did purchase my tent the first year I did it, because I could get a really good, and when you do purchase a tent, I thought it was worth getting a really nice sturdy tent, not just those little cheapy pop-up guys, because the wind, like Joe said, is an issue. You will have to provide your own weights for all 4 of the sides of your, or feet of your tent, or whatever you want to call them.
And the tents are required to be weighted.
Weighted.
We will not let you have a tent at the event that is unweighted.
Yeah, so you get your own weights to go with that. You'll see, if you've been to the market, you might see people have their own homemade ways of making those weights with the plastic cylinders they fill with sand and et cetera. So there's different ways of doing that, so you could ask around. But I purchased my tent because it was $500 for a really nice sturdy tent, and I knew it was gonna pay off if I did 2 markets, and even if I didn't, I could use it on my own for family stuff or whatever. So for me, it made sense. But then again, you have to think, do I want to store that tent somewhere, like, for the rest of the time? That's kind of a thing that you think about. So that is my experience with hanging. It's been a learning curve, but my first year out, I think, to make things easy, like we talked about, if you have the means to rent a tent and have them do the grid wall and set it up all for you, man, is that nice. I mean, it is so great to just come and hang your work on the wall versus I'm gonna haul my tent, I'm gonna haul on my, you know, hanging stuff. It's a lot more intensive to do that, so just.
And also just remember, on Sunday,
You
you're
got,
just gonna, if you have, you're gonna have to
you gotta take
pack
your
up all your stuff and take the tent down. Yeah, so just
and then
don't
you're
forget that
really
part
gonna
too.
need a drink after that. No, I'm just kidding.
Do they rent pedestals
No, you're
to
not.
the tents?
You're not getting
You're
it.
gonna get drunk. Yeah,
Yeah, weather's something to think about.
yeah.
Just have to be prepared.
Flexible.
Well, and with the teens, we did a teen event, which was a 10 by 20 booth, and one of the things that we ran into, we did have some rain this last year.
Yeah, we did.
And so with the grid wall, because if you have 2D work hanging on the grid wall, you have to worry about anything dripping or coming in from the back too. So, you know, be prepared maybe with some things like some rolls of like plastic bags or something, or like some painters, you know, tarps kind of stuff, that you could just throw over a little bit and make sure that none of that water is gonna come down and touch and end up inside the frames or anything that you've made. So there are some things that you learn to consider. Having like a little toolbox, I think, is awesome, with zip ties, with extra hooks. The grid wall is really great with the S hooks. These S hooks you can get for hanging stuff and doing things like that. But I don't know if we want to talk more about that once people are like signed up and ready to.
I think we do, because
Yeah.
even I know that
It's very detailed.
all of you have a lot of great tips
Tips.
on that, and so we will put together, again, in the artist's packet, some of those tips when it gets closer. And if you decide to go ahead with an application and you are selected, we will have another artists meeting closer to Sam as well. So please know there will be many, many ways that we'll be sharing lots of information. This is just the first one of these opportunities that you'll have if you decide to go forward this year. Yes.
So how competitive is it? Like, do you accept everyone who their artwork is up to a certain standard and numerous enough? Or is it like, you know, 300 people apply and only 150 get in? Or like, how does this?
Well, there's a limited number of booths, so they're already, that there is that limitation. We, from our perspective, I think have always been fortunate in that there has always been more demand than we have space, so we can look through and create a waiting list, you know, so there are more artists who are interested than there is space.
Okay, but it's not like by a factor of 3.
I mean, it honestly varies every year. It's never been by a factor of 3 though.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be extreme.
And some of it would depend on how many people were sharing booths too versus wanting their own booth.
Well, since COVID, because again, we've changed the layout and which reduced, so pre-COVID, the booths all touched each other. So if you were in the line, you couldn't put things on the outside. But obviously during COVID, when everything had to be spaced, we switched that. And artist feedback and patron feedback was very positive about that. They said it felt more open and airier and all of that. So we've kept that. That has reduced the number of spaces that are available, which has obviously reduced the number of artists that we can have. So for the past 4 years since COVID, we have determined that there is a set number of double booths and a set number of single booths.
So total for last year was what? Total
I mean, it was
artists?
half and half. So we said half of the booths will be double booths.
But how many?
Shared
artists?
booths. So when you say double booths, I always think about 20 times 10.
No, I meant shared booths.
Yeah.
So total, how many artists last year?
Well, we had, I think we ended up with 129 booths, so.
If you're on the waiting list, keep preparing. I've known a lot of people that have gotten that last minute call.
Because COVID and people get sick, family emergencies happen, life
Yeah.
happens, so don't be upset if you're on the waiting list.
Photographs of your artwork is included in the application.
Yes.
What do you look for in regards to photographs for?
Again, that is work that is, could be made or learned about at the Art Students League.
Okay.
So, and just to give, some of you don't seem to be familiar with Cafe. Cafe is a site where you load up any images you want of your work, and as you apply to calls, you just click on which images you want to go into that call. So
They're ready
there's-
for all your
Yeah,
shows.
it's a portfolio that you keep in Cafe.
But-
And you pay for the entry fee on Cafe, you answer the questions on Cafe, it's all done there.
It's a little off topic, but I recommend it because not only have you got a portfolio online ready to show to anybody, really, but they also have listings for the various opportunities. And really, I feel like people should be looking at those listings on a regular basis. Maybe not every month, but once in a while, check out what's out there, opportunity-wise.
Are you guys posting on Cafe or Zap?
Oh, it is Zap.
You use
you're
Zap.
right. I do use Zap, I'm
Okay, I was
sorry.
like,
Oh,
Cafe,
I thought it was Cafe, sorry.
Our other
Cafe is
calls
called
are
for
on-
entries,
Our
yeah.
other calls are on Cafe.
Yeah.
Good
Thank
catch.
you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zap is more for
So
shows.
Sorry, yeah.
So what's the address for Zap then?
Well, you know what, all of this will be on the website,
Oh,
and when
okay.
we're ready to, before,
Launch.
like the week before March 1st, when it will, we'll be sending out all kinds of things, and the website link will just be right on our, right there, you can just, the hot link, you can just click right through.
And it's 4 weeks, the application's
It's
open?
the month of March.
Yep, so you gotta,
31 days.
yeah. So you have a long time you can go look and prepare and get stuff together if you don't have it right away.
So notifications early April?
I think what it says right now is by mid-April.
Any other questions for our esteemed panel? Thanks, guys.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I just had some highlights. If you can be bothered, it kind of captures a lot of the things that I've said anyway, and what my colleagues have said. I said, the biggest thing I've learned about SAM, because this was our first thing when Deb asked us to come back with stuff, is to invite your people. That's all your people. So your friends, your family, your email list if you have it, your colleagues, the people you take classes with. Use that email list, whatever it is. Have a checklist of stuff to bring. Have an assistant if you're in a full booth. I think I had one even with a half booth, but it's kind of unique to jewelry. It frees you also to engage with clients, but still have someone to welcome folks who are interested. You can never have enough business cards. I learned that the first year. You will have good shows, you will have bad shows, and everything in between. No 2 years are the same, and that includes with the weather. Keep a smile and a positive attitude always and until it hurts. Unless you are generally known and accepted, i.e. it's your brand, as a grumpy recluse, grumpy in energy or demeanor will detract people from entering your zone. The power of attraction is real, but don't be fake. Just my final words.
So again, throughout the rest of this year, we will be continuing to add information to the SAM pages of our website, so that will be the main resource for you, and there will be a way to submit questions if you have them on there.
And if you're
So if you
accepted,
can
there,
think of anything else?
there's an artist meeting if you're,
Yeah,
when you're
we talked
accepted.
about that,
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
thank you all.
Good luck.
Thank you, good luck,
We'll see you at the market.
one way or another.